All right, now we get to the one that's going to get everybody yelling at us. When we clip this and it's just this video, we're just talking about this team, we're going to make a lot of people mad because the ceiling, when we're optimistic, is going to make some people mad. And the floor, when we're pessimistic, is going to make a completely different group of people mad, but they're all going to be mad because everybody has a strong opinion about Coach Prime. Of course, we're talking about the Colorado Buffaloes. Now, maybe the best quarterback in the conference in Shedeur Sanders. I think the Jalen Daniels stands, and they're going to have something to say about that. The Cam Rising stands are going to have something to say about that. But I do think Shedeur Sanders is, if not the best, definitely on a very short list of the best. Travis Hunter is the best player in the conference. I have no qualms about saying that.
Yeah.
Great corner, great receiver too. But the question is, are they going to be better on the line of scrimmage? They once again completely retooled the roster through the transfer portal. I believe 42 incoming transfer portal players. So basically, everyone who was a backup got shuttled out, and they brought new people in. I will say, they did not lose a ton of guys that were in their plans, like Dylan Edwards, the running back who did wind up at Kansas State. He was in their plans, but most of the guys that left were not in their plans. So the assumption is that everybody, that Colorado is going to get much better. I don't know that they're going to get much better because I don't know how you build on the line of scrimmage almost exclusively through the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, the one positional group that isn't entirely reliant upon talent is offensive line. I mean, you can get away with having absurd talent most places, but offensive line play is so much more important about continuity. With that being said, though, Andy, just on the whole, Colorado, greater talent than last year's roster, right? Like a lot more talent than last year's roster, this year's roster.
Yeah,
fair?
I'd say so.
Yeah. So they should be improved. Now, we'll take a look at the schedule in a second because the schedule is a whole different animal. They've got a rough non-conference, and they've done no favors for themselves with the non-conference slate. But yeah, I mean, they had speedster LeJonte Webster from Florida Atlantic to go
from FAU. LeJonte Webster's a very good player. That's a good pickup. Justin Myers, the guard from UTEP, is good. I don't know if he's their best incoming offensive lineman because they got Jordan Seaton, the number one offensive tackle prospect in the country out of high school. But they got Deion Haynes, the edge rusher from Pitt. They got Dallin Hayden, the running back from Ohio State. So they did get some good players in the portal.
So they have a lot more talent. And the question, though, is their offensive line. Is it going to be good enough in order to keep Shedeur healthy and upright? Which obviously he wasn't able to do last year. My other thing is their new defensive coordinator is Robert Livingston, who never has called the defense before. He's been a cornerbacks coach and most recently was in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. So you're now counting on a guy that's never called the defense to sort of save your defense because it wasn't like their defense was very good last year either.
Yeah, and Pat Shurmur's running the offense. So remember, they panicked in the middle of last season, demoted Sean Lewis, who wound up becoming the head coach at San Diego State. And that's where my concern about the offensive line comes in, because you went from an offense, like the reason you hire a Sean Lewis is that offense does not require you to have a dominant offensive line. It's a catch and throw kind of offense. Like Pat Shurmur's going to run something a little more NFL-ish, and you're going to need to be able to give the QB time to throw. You're going to need to be able to run the ball to establish play action. If you can't, it will be terrible. Like, it will not just be bad and Shedeur getting sacked a lot. It will be non-functional if you can't block. So they have got to be better on the offensive line.
Yeah. So, I mean, just throwing it out there, Andy, they've got a defensive coordinator who's never called a defense, an offensive coordinator that has been not coordinating any offenses for the last few years. I think he was last with the Broncos in 2021, and he was an analyst, I think, last year for Colorado. So, I mean, he hasn't actually called plays since 2021. Oh, and by the way,
well, no, he called him at the end of last year.
That's right. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right. So, but still, I mean, like how much different, how big of an ego does Pat Shurmur have? Because a big part of this is deferring your ego in order to put the right offense out there that caters to your players. And that's what I wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like some of these guys come in with the NFL credentials and it's like, we're going to run my offense because I've been very successful at the highest level. And so it's like,
I mean, the thing is, if you've got Shedeur, you've got Travis Hunter, LeJontay Wester, Jimmy Horn Jr., like
right. They've got
you
some
got weapons.
Now.
Yeah. So
and that's where it's like,
figure out.
And that's where I get, like, I hear a lot of people, that know what they're talking about, saying that they see Colorado as being a bowl team and competing for the Big 12 championship. But then I've heard other people that know what they're talking about say, no, that's a 2-3 win team. I get the high ceiling piece because of the talent that they have, but it's the meat and potatoes part that has you concerned, and that's the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah, I've said I don't know that they're going to be much better than they were last year. Now, what does not much better mean? Not much better could be 5-7, could be 6-6, but there's also a path with this schedule. Now, look, the non-conference, North Dakota State is not what North Dakota State was. If this were a few years ago, I'd be like, this is a game you got to worry about. I'm not worried about this game. Yeah. Nebraska, be very worried about that. Their defense is outstanding. Jeff Sims, who we mentioned earlier, who was transferred to Arizona State, had one of the worst 5-minute stretches you'll ever see at the end of the first half of the Colorado game last year. Nebraska had no chance after that. Colorado just steamrolled them. Don't assume because you steamrolled Nebraska last year that it's going to be easy this year. It will not. And I think they should be better than Colorado State. So, like, at worst, you should be 2-1 coming out of the non-conference, and then it's just a matter of what you can do in conference. So I'm going to put the floor at 4-8, same as last season. I think they'll be better than that. I just don't know if they'll be a lot better than that. But in terms of what they can be, like if this offensive line turns out to be pretty good, this could be an 8 or 9 win team. Yeah.
Well, and to your point about the North Dakota State game, I think you're 100% right. The Nebraska game also, this is one of those where it's great on timing. You're playing them in Dylan Raiola's second career collegiate game, as opposed to later on in the season where he's going to be a much better passer, you'd imagine, at that point in time. I think their floor, I'm buying it. I think their floor is a bowl game. Like I genuinely think that. I just think there's too much talent.
Oh, wow. The floor is 6-6. Very nice. Yeah,
I think the floor is 6-6. The reason for that is, like, Deion needs this. He needs some proof that this thing is moving in the right direction. And so after winning 4 games last year, having it be an utter disaster, quote unquote, anything less than 6 wins to me would be a disappointment. So I think he needs a proof that this thing is working, and I think he gets it this year. There's just too much talent. Like Webster and Horn and Hunter on the outside with Shedeur Sanders. Like that's a tough cover in this league. And especially given, I think we talked about earlier with Arizona, not be able to run the football. Like Colorado can run the ball and should be able to this year with the running backs they have.
Yeah. I think a lot of defenses are just they're going to try to get Shedeur on the ground.
Yeah.
And because I think if he can throw the ball, Colorado's going to do a lot. So
what we saw in the TCU game to open the season last year. That's exactly right.
All right. So Ari, very high on the Buffaloes, ceiling high, floor high. Got the bowl game as the floor. That's ceiling is the roof.
Ceiling is the playoff. I'll say their ceiling is the playoff.
Wow. You just increased the views on this YouTube video by a whole lot there, Ari.
Well, look, I mean,
I didn't ask you to do that, but listen, as a businessman, I appreciate it.
Well, look, and I'm not just saying, I mean, if you got the best quarterback in college football, you got a chance. And I think people are forgetting that, like, Shedeur is so good, despite the fact that they had no offensive line play. So imagine if they get just a little bit, just an inch more better offensive line play.
Yeah.
They live in the extremes, right? Colorado lives in the extremes. Either they're so good or so bad. I think if you have a more like nuanced look at them, it's like, yeah, that quarterback situation is really good. And so,
yeah, they've raised the floor is what you're saying.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.